Hello everyone, and welcome back to Wiki Whisperer, Articles Aloud. My name is Adrian Curo, and I will be your host. Now this is a show where I select a Wikipedia article at random, or by request, and I read it in its entirety. Now to keep with the spirit of authenticity, as if I was truly reading to you, I've decided to do this show in one take, no cuts. No edits. That means all stutters, misspoken words, and errors will be kept in, which I apologize for in advance. Today's article is about New York City subway service V. Let's begin. The V 6th Avenue Local was a rapid transit service in the B division of the New York City subway. Its route emblem, or bullet, was colored orange, since it used the IND 6th Avenue line in Manhattan. The V operated weekdays only from approximately 6:30 a.m. to midnight between 71st Avenue in Forest Hills, Queens, and 2nd Avenue near the border of the East Village and the Lower East Side, Manhattan. The V debuted on December 17, 2001, when the connection from the IND 63rd Street line to the IND Queens Boulevard line opened as a replacement for the F, which was rerouted via this new connection on the IND 53rd Street line. Except for a brief period in early 2005, the V had the same service pattern during its 8.5-year history. As part of a series of service reductions to close a budget cap, the V train was eliminated on June 25, 2010. With the exception of service at 2nd Avenue, it was combined with the M train, which was rerouted from Lower Manhattan and South Brooklyn via the Christie Street connection. Service history. Former use. Originally, the V was used to indicate provisional routes running on the IND 6th Avenue line. Older roll signs had the orange V emblem with the text, quote, via 6th Avenue, end quote, as a provisional service if ever needed. Initial service plan. The V was originally conceived as a 6th Avenue extra since the early 1980s, running via 63rd Street. It appeared as an orange bullet on roll signs. The V also appeared on the digital signs of the R44s and R46s, with any route and designation combination that could be used for the 6th Avenue line. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority, MTA, in December 2000 announced plans for a new subway route running between 2nd Avenue in Manhattan and 71st Avenue in Queens. The V train would run along the 6th Avenue line, the 53rd Street Tunnel, and the Queens Boulevard line's local tracks. This new route would supplement the F train, which would be rerouted to the 63rd Street lines, and the E train through the 53rd Street Tunnel. The introduction of the V service was expected to increase the number of Queens Boulevard trains entering Manhattan by 9 trains per hour. To make room for V trains on Queens Boulevard, the G train was cut back to a new weekday terminal at Long Island City, Court Square, and the F train was rerouted via the 63rd Street connector. In Manhattan, the F and V made identical stops between 47th and 50th Streets and the V train's Lower East Side, 2nd Avenue terminal station. To prepare for this service, rush hour service was simulated twice on Saturdays during early 2001. The first time, the V, labeled as S, ran via 63rd Street, the F ran via 53rd Street, and the G ran to 179th Street. It was particularly done to see if it was possible to maintain existing G train service along Queens Boulevard with the new V train added on. When this test became unsuccessful, the V's eventual service pattern, via 53rd Street, was tested on September 8th and was a success. Due to the September 11th attacks and numerous services being disrupted by damage sustained in the attacks, including our service along Queens Boulevard, the V train's entry into service was delayed. The MTA Board's Transit Committee voted on May 25, 2001, to recommend that the entirety of the board vote on the proposed V train. On May 31, 2001, the MTA Board approved the operating plan for the opening of the 63rd Street connector, including the beginning of V service, which was to begin on November 11, 2001. The V made its debut on December 17, 2001. Service ran every 6 minutes during rush hours and 10 minutes other times, running southbound from 71st Avenue between 5:38 a.m. and 10:57 p.m. and northbound from 2nd Avenue between 5:54 a.m. and 11:33 p.m. Controversy. The new service plan was designed to redistribute Queens-bound passenger loads along the heavily used IND 6th Avenue line by encouraging use of the additional local trains provided for shorter trips, and to improve service and transfer opportunities for passengers using local stations along Queens Boulevard. The New York Times described the service plan as, quote, complex and heavily criticized, end quote. New York Times columnist Randy Kennedy wrote that 4 months after it opened, the service was operating at only 49% of capacity. However, ridership had, quote, increased 30% since it began, and every new V rider, as lonely as he or she might be, relieves crowding on the E, end quote. The Strap Hangers campaign and Queens Civic Congress organized protests in 2002 to request the V train be rerouted to the 63rd Street tunnel. The overcrowding on the E train was, in part, due to riders' propensity to board an express, even in situations where it offers no real advantage in travel time over the local. Conductors were asked to make scripted announcements to urge riders to use the V, noting that they had a better chance of getting a seat on the train. By May 2002, ridership started picking up on the V, and crowding on the E was reduced from 115% of capacity during rush hours to 96%. Kennedy sought out and interviewed some passengers who were not happy with the V's debut. Quote, last week, there were 2 express trains, the E and the F, running along Queens Boulevard to 53rd Street and Lexington Avenue, the station where many people catch the Lexington line. Now, there is only one express, the E, and a local, the V, going to that popular station, and the other express, the F, detours to a less popular station, 63rd and Lexington, where you cannot transfer to the Lexington Avenue line without walking outside for a few blocks. So the questions being asked privately, and sometimes very publicly, in Queens stations yesterday were, do I take a train not going where I'm going and, God forbid, transfer? Do I take a relatively uncrowded train that goes where I'm going, but that gives me the scenic tour of subterranean Queens? End quote. On January 23, 2005, a fire destroyed the signal room of Chambers Street on the IND 8th Avenue line. V service was temporarily extended to Euclid Avenue until C service was restored on February 2nd. Merger of V and M-Trans. In late 2009, the MTA confronted a financial crisis and many of the same service cuts threatened just months earlier during a previous budget crisis were revisited. One of the proposals included completely phasing out M service and using the V as its replacement. Under this proposal, the V would no longer serve its southern terminus at Lower East Side 2nd Avenue. Instead, after leaving Broadway Lafayette Street, it would take the Christie Street connection to join the BMT Nassau Street line and stop at Essex Street in Manhattan before crossing the Williamsburg Bridge and serving all M stations to Middle Village Metropolitan Avenue in Queens. The MTA determined that this move, while still a service cut, would actually benefit M passengers, as approximately 17,000 of them traveled to its stations in Lower Manhattan, whereas 22,000 transferred to other lines to reach destinations in Midtown Manhattan. Additionally, this merger would open up new travel options for Northern Brooklyn and Queens J/C riders, in that it would allow direct and more convenient access to areas that were not served by those routes before, such as Midtown Manhattan. On March 19, 2010, it was decided that the V designation would be discontinued and the new service would retain the M's designation instead, which would now be designated with an orange symbol representing an IND 6th Avenue line train. Many MTA board members had opposed the elimination of the M designation, saying that passengers would be more comfortable with an M designation rather than a V designation, and because the M had been around longer than the V. The V ceased operation on Friday, June 25, 2010, with the last train bound for Forest Hills 71st Avenue, leaving Lower East Side 2nd Avenue at 11:33 p.m. Official M service via the Christie Street connection began on Monday, June 28, 2010. From July 3, 2017 until April 27, 2018, reconstruction work on the BMT Myrtle Avenue line resulted in a limited number of M trains operating between 71st Avenue in Queens and 2nd Avenue in Manhattan during rush hours, replicating the V's original routing prior to its discontinuation. Final route. Lines used. The following lines were used by the V from December 2001 to June 2010. Line IND Queens Boulevard line from 71st Avenue to Queens Plaza on local tracks, and Line IND Queens Boulevard line from Queens Plaza to 5th Avenue 53rd Street on all tracks. Also, IND 6th Avenue line from 47th through 50th Streets, Rockefeller Center, to Lower East Side 2nd Avenue on local tracks. The article also includes a table graph of the stations used by the V from December 2001 to June 2010, along with subway transfers and notes. If you would like to take a look at this table, the link to the article will be in the description. And with that, we conclude this week's episode of Wiki Whisperer Articles Aloud on New York City Subway Service Line V. If you have any recommendations on how I can improve my audio and or format, if you would like to suggest an article for next week's reading, or you would simply like to give some words of encouragement, please feel free to do so by emailing me at wikiwhisperer@gmail.com. That is spelled WIKIWHISPERER@gmail.com. All information used on this podcast can be found on wikipedia.org and is available for fair use under the Creative Commons license. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to give the podcast a 5-star review on whatever podcast directory you may be listening, as it really does help me out. And whether you are a first-time listener or a repeat listener of the show, thank you for tuning in to Wiki Whisperer Articles Aloud. I have been your host, Adrian Curo, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.